Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Again, directed by Clint, starring John Cusack, Kevin Spacey. The IMDb plot summary: a visiting city reporter's assignment suddenly revolves around the murder trial of a local millionaire whom he befriends. This was the first movie of Clint that I saw, actually, whether actor or director. Actually, I saw this on VHS, rented it when it first came out back in 97, because it was based on a book that was a giant phenomenon here in the States. And I read
Yeah.
this book when I was in high school. One of the few early memories of mine of being like a page turner where it's like, oh my God, I gotta
Mm.
find out what happens. And it sucked me in and I love this book. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna rent this movie. And I was a kid and didn't know that this had come out and was a huge critical and box office flop and is not a film that is looked back, I think even now, fondly on in terms of Clint's output. And this also was a movie when I came into this. Again, I had never seen a Clint movie, so I assumed that as a director, again, I was surprised he even made this. Like, oh wait, Clint Eastwood, isn't he that guy who's in those Dirty Harry movies? Like that was sort of my outset, and my impression after watching this too was, okay, maybe this is just like again a journeyman director. He's not in the movie. I don't really understand why a guy who's a cowboy direct, and a Dirty Harry guy would make a movie like this. So I kind of wrote him off actually a bit as a director when I first saw this too. However, I really enjoyed the movie when I first saw it. I felt that it captured the book and the uniqueness of the book in a way that was really interesting. I thought the atmosphere of really feeling like the quirkiness and the weirdness of Savannah, which is a place I have been, and it has a very specific quirky vibe to it, comes across really well. I think the performances are great. I'm a huge John Cusack fan, so that really worked for me a lot. And Kevin Spacey, you know, all the stuff that's happened to him, obviously he's not a good guy at all. But I think he's a great actor, and this is a performance that I, for me, works really well. And yeah, I'll get into more of my thoughts, which are basically though, like as the years have gone on, the couple times I come back to this, has sort of dropped in my mind, honestly, of in terms of how it works for me as a film. But curious if you'd seen this before, and then we can get into more of the movie. Yeah, what are your thoughts on the Midnight of Garden of Good? Had you entered the garden before?
Yeah. I had never even heard of this movie. So when you put on this list, I was like, is this a real movie or what is this? And I was blown away by the movie. I wouldn't say like it's a masterpiece or anything, but just
Hmm.
the fact that Clint made this movie, I think I'm still kind of marveling in that surprise of
Uh-huh.
like Clint chose this subject matter and made this movie. But then to go deeper, yeah, I think it captures the place. I've never been to Savannah, but you really get a tactile, textural sense of the people and the place and the quirkiness of it and kind of old money, new money, the people, on the sidelines and where they at and how the social circles kind of evolve, like all of that. I'm sure it's in the book, but it's captured beautifully in the movie. Super entertaining. The performances are great. Some might even say this is Kevin Spacey typecasting or put, I was like, oh, of course you're playing this role.
Well, at the time we didn't know, but
At the
yes,
time we
now,
didn't
yeah.
know, but I was like, oh wow, this was like this role is made for you. All things aside, he is a very good actor,
He
but
is. He is. He is.
so uh, I'm not a big John Cusack fan, as we've discussed. And first,
Hmm.
I was like, oh gosh, I'll have to watch this mouth area
Oh
the
yeah,
whole
your mouth
time.
area thing. Yeah.
Yes, because there's a lot of weirdness there as well, and just like button eyes. And I was like, oh, but
Yeah.
then actually he's great in the movie because he's a great kind of audience surrogate kind of character, kind of bland but interesting enough, and you kind
Yep.
of go along the journey with him. So, but I think the thing that particularly interested me in the movie, and your mileage might vary. People might be like, oh, why are you handling, especially from like 2024 lens, right? People might be like, oh, why are you handling subject matters like homosexuality and drag and people who are wielding power and using their sexuality in different ways? And but I don't know, I found all of that done pretty interestingly. And again, in classic Clint fashion, even though he's so early in his directing career, there's no judgment. Like there's a drag queen character in the movie. Yeah, there are other people in the town who might be passing judgment towards her, but not Clint and not the movie. I thought that actor did a great job and had so much to do in the movie.
She's not an actor, by the way.
Oh, she's a real drag queen, I think.
Well, no, like this is based on a true story, and that's actually her. She's playing herself in the movie. Yeah,
Wow.
which I think to me, like in terms of the looking at a 20, the 2024 lens, I think that I was worried going back to this because I hadn't seen it in a while. It's like, okay, well, how are they going to deal with like trans issues back in the 90s? And I think it's hard to again judge her performance because it's her. Like you can't say, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're sexualizing." Well, that's who she was and she's playing
yeah.
herself. Again, you can't sort of paint an entire community either with a broad brush. They're going to be,
All kinds of
trans folks that
people.
like overly playing off the sexuality that she has, and I think that's cool. And I think that was a standout character, at least to me, when I saw the movie
So
the
great.
first
I had
time,
no
because she's
idea.
the real person. That's
I had
actually
no
her.
idea.
Yeah.
It looked like this person performs, and she probably does if she's playing their character in the movie. I thought she was great,
Hmm.
and also how Kevin Spacey's kind of he's gay and how that is handled in the movie and how that's revealed. All
Yep.
of that feels pretty nuanced, but also entertaining. And Clint has this unique gift of sort of not painting, life like you said with a broad paintbrush. Like it, and you do that when you create all these structural elements that make it specific, right? That this is specific about this place, this
Correct.
time, these people. This
Hmm.
is not some sweeping statement. And then ultimately, are these people able to get to the truth of the people that they are playing? And they do. So I don't know. I was thoroughly entertained. I will say, and I'm now very curious to read the book. Like some of the plot things just maybe were dropped in the movie, or I didn't quite land on me, which is like,
Hmm.
why did Kevin Spacey seek out John Cusack to come here? And was there some sort of a relationship even between the two of them? So that's one question mark. Second question mark, it's great to see like John Cusack's character has no judgment or anything on the drag queen character at
Yeah.
all, right?
Yeah.
Like they're pals. And that's just so matter of fact and wonderful to kind of see in the movie. Like his sexuality is a bit of a question mark in the movie to me. And
He
I
gets off with
wonder,
Clint Eastwood's daughter in the movie. Come on.
that's fine.
Okay.
Who,
She does an okay job and she sings the last like the song over the closing
right.
credits. But yeah, she doesn't like light up the screen as much as the rest of the actors.
No.
But
But there's some
the
unanswered questions in my mind. So,
yes, so John Cusack is playing the author of the book. So it's sort of an autobiography of him going down and then just going down to cover just a ball at Kevin Spacey's
right,
house. And then it turns out there's a murder, and then he ends up actually moving to Savannah later, writing some articles, and then writes this book, which becomes a giant bestseller, and then this
right,
film comes out. So I don't know. Yeah, that's interesting. I think the point though about that you made about individual people and not painting communities or things with a broad brush, I think is Clint too. Like he looks at every person as an individual, not
yeah,
bringing any preconceived notions of, oh, well, you're a drag queen, so you must act like this, or you're this type of person, or you're a closeted gay,
right,
socialite, so you must have these. I was like, no, like everyone, he looks at every single person as an individual, which I think is a good way to
right.
go through life, honestly, because people
Totally.
can, yeah, and I like that, and I think you do see that in this film, and I think that it is also interesting that in a way that's kind of like what some of this people in this community think too. Like, yes, Kevin Spacey in this is the real life guy too was closeted, but everyone knew he was gay,
Right,
and they still let him into all of their social circles, even though they might have been against his lifestyle. They didn't let that stop them from inviting him in. And yeah, you could argue that's two-faced and hiding
but
truths and things like that, but that's just the society
that's
that
reality.
Savannah had, especially in the South. There's a lot of that. Like, look the other way, even though you might hate on someone, there's all this pretend and all this kind of
Right,
stuff. The Southern hospitality, right? There's two
right,
sides to that. I think Clint captures that really well in this movie as John Cusack, and again, like you said, an audience surrogate character goes in and you're sort of like, what's going on? Like, how is this even functioning? How are you like, obviously this guy's gay. Like, why are you letting him do this? But then you start to realize as more layers of the town and the society kind of get pulled back, it all just sort of makes sense. And same thing with Lady
yeah.
Chablis, like coming into that one scene where she's disrupting that nice dinner for some association in some society. It's
Oh
like
yeah,
they let her come in and they're polite to her. They don't immediately kick her out, even though she is basically hitting on one of the sons at that
yeah, and
dinner
causing a huge
and
ruckus,
causing a huge
and
ruckus. They don't be like, oh, get out of here. We don't want any, drag queens around here. It's like, no, everyone just sort of lets her be. And I think that's interesting. And maybe that might be what attracted Clint to this story, because those contradictions and the interesting morality that every individual has in this community, which was captured in the book too.
yeah,
But
you're
maybe
right.
that's what attracted him to this too. Because at the outset, I remember even at the time when I saw his name on the closing credits, when I first saw this, it was like Clint Eastwood, like the cowboy guy, like he's the director. I didn't. completely devoid of the Clint persona on screen. But to your point you were making earlier, I think it captures him as a person in terms of what he looks at and how he looks at the world.
Totally. No, I really enjoyed this. I'm so glad you put this on the list, and I want to read the book for sure.
Yeah, and you should go to Savannah too. It's a beautiful place
Which
that
I want to
is
do as well.
so
That's been
well
on my list
captured
for a long time.
in
Yeah.
this movie. Super unique, and I highly
Yeah.
recommend. I'm not getting paid by the tourism board. I will just note this is not a hashtag ad, but I think people need to go and check out that city. It's very special. Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.